we'll begin. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm pleased to present two esteemed members of our legal community who've been long-standing members of the legal community here in Cleveland, and a lot of their work speaks for itself. And I'd like to introduce them, and then we will have a little Q&A with our panelists, and then open the floor up to your comments, questions, ideas. So first, I'm Bryan Adamson, Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion here at the law school. And as part of Black History Month, we thought it fitting to present some of our own, our alumni who have helped create the past and forge trails for people like me and for like you. So we have two of our wonderful alumni here. And first, I'd like to introduce Judge Groves. Judge Emanuella Groves was elected to the 8th District Court of Appeals in 2020, her term commencing on 2021. Prior to her election, Judge Groves served for 18 years as a trial judge to the Cleveland Municipal Court, where she was first elected in 2001. Her commitment to justice and the well-being of her community is evidenced by the legacy that she's left at the municipal court. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette wrote of her in 2016, "It isn't often that Pittsburghers look to Cleveland for help, but that is exactly what they did when Judge Groves led the Regional Transit Authority Healthline Fair Enforcement Practice unconstitutional, ruled that it was unconstitutional. And this decision caused the RTA to immediately terminate its practice of having law enforcement officers board buses and demand that all passengers produce proof of payment without any evidence that the passengers had failed to pay. Therefore, Pittsburghers abandoned its consideration to adopt RTA policies." I'm going to leave it to Judge Groves to talk about her tenure at the municipal court, but see fit that it was equally impactful and groundbreaking in so many ways. She serves on numerous committees and 2 national boards. She is also co-founder and co-chair of the Ohio Black Judges Association, Inc., which is an association that was formed in 2021 to increase diversity in Ohio's courts and to provide a collective voice to address administration of justice issues. So listen closely. If any of you have any remote interest in being a judge or even working for a judge, she's got wonderful advice and is a wonderful friend and mentor to all of us here. I'm sure many of you can already attest to that. Additionally, Judge Groves has received numerous local awards and 2 national awards. Recently, in 2021, Western Reserve, our Black Law Students Association, honored Judge Groves with its inaugural Alumni of the Year. In 2019, Judge Groves received lost my place. In the Cleveland NAACP Award, Community Leadership Award. She is a member of Olivet International Baptist Church and the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Gerald Jackson, Esquire. Gerald Milton Jackson is a 71 graduate of the law school and has worked with economic and financial institutions for over 4 decades, while always finding time to share information, strategies, and resources with the governmental, quasi-governmental, and community-based organizations. He has and continues to represent small private business owners and quasi-public and private nonprofit organizations and entrepreneurs. Mr. Jackson is a managing member of GM Jackson Law Company, a Northeast Ohio business law boutique, which maintains its focus in real estate, probate, trust, and business transactions. Mr. Jackson has logged a 45-year career in commercial and residential real estate law, business succession planning, and asset protection. Currently, he serves as chair of the Founders and Legacy Committee of the Norman Minor Bar Association and a member of the Ohio State Bar Association's Committee on Real Estate Law, Estate Planning, and among other things. As a matter of fact, I do believe you were a founding member of the Norman Minor Bar Association, right? As well as a founding member of our Balsa chapter. Mr. Jackson also serves as private counsel, general counsel, special counsel, and/or consultant to numerous for-profit and nonprofit organizations. His clientele includes small businesses, credit unions, clerk churches, charter schools, and business trade associations. He is frequently invited to serve as a speaker and/or seminar leader on real estate transfer and development matters. Additionally, he sits as acting judge for the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Judge Emanuella and Gerald Jackson. I'm going to slow down a bit because I'm really tongue-tied right now. Just to open up with the general question here, tell us what got you to go to law school? What compelled you to go to law school as opposed to any other career path you could have forged? And why did you choose Case Western Law School? I'll let you choose who goes first.
Well, for me, it was convenient. Actually, I began my legal training at University of Colorado in Boulder. And I was involved in a program there and running a program for the university for students who were attempting to matriculate from high school into the university. And a rigorous academic gauntlet in order to right to receive a full scholarship and stipend. We started 42 students in that program. Of the 42, 41 were successful. Technically, 42 were successful. One transferred away from me from the University of Colorado in Boulder and transferred down to Colorado Springs, so I didn't get credit for 40 finishing. But in any event, also, while I was doing that, I was also starting law school there. I had some friends who were interested in law school. This is not too long after I finished undergrad. And I found it enjoyable, I found it challenging. But that was a point in my history in which my city was literally on fire, because that was during the Huff riots. And I felt a sense of abandonment, if you will, being in God's country in Colorado, and my friends and relatives were here, fighting the flames, if you will. I returned to Cleveland. I applied to Case Western Law School, and I was admitted. From that point, of course, I had a heightened interest in things like justice and so forth. Sort of carried that on during the law school years, like that, to kind of stir the pot and address the issues. Sort of been doing it since. It just has grown from one level to the other. It's been fun, and it's been challenging. Now, when I reflect on some of the things in the past that we worked so hard to achieve, unraveled all over again. Not the least of which is something as basic as voting rights, which we thought, we won't have to fight this battle again. But we all know, that's very much on the table, and very much an issue that needs to be addressed and diligently by all quarters of people who genuinely believe in the rule. Kind of my history of getting into.
I grew up in Canton, which is just an hour away. I went to Kent State University, and I'm the seventh out of 8 children, and first generation college educated. All of us went to college. I wanted to be a school teacher. My sister, who had already started her career path to become a medical doctor, encouraged me to go to law school, and she said, plus you like to argue. And of course I said, no, I don't, which goes up there. Proved her point. So when I came to law school, I was 19 years old. So that introduction into law school was very challenging for me. 19, and I was a business management major. So you still try to figure out, the level of success that I had experienced in going through school. I was not experiencing it when I came to Case. So I made the decision that, and I was studying, from like 3 in the afternoon till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then by the second year, even before then, I signed up. I went to Akron U summer school, and I met Attorney Jackson, and Jim Alexander, and former Dean Buchanan. And that, and I didn't realize and appreciate until when we had lunch this last year, the impact of working with them had, because in law school you need some affirmation, right? That hey, you can do this, and not being second guessed whether or not you belong, and you can. And so it was just a very, very meaningful experience to have been able to work for them. I began to see a higher level of success. When I say success, I did not see as much distress. And when I went to Akron, I got an A, I got a B. I came back to Case, and I didn't have that same level of success. And as a matter of fact, I was talking just within the past 10 years with there were 9 in my class, 9 blacks out of 250. And my one friend and I, we both had the same property class. And we got D pluses. And then when I mentioned it to a friend who also went to Case like 10 years later, had the same professor, you want to guess what grade she got? She got a D plus too. So the odds of the 3 of us getting a D plus, I think, is somewhat questionable. But you go through the challenges, and with that, I think you get a certain amount of fortitude, right? And when I came back here to teach, they didn't ask me what my GPA was. They looked at the things that I did after I left, and so not everyone has the same journey. I have a daughter, a son-in-law. They did extremely well in law school, but they had a different path. They were much better prepared. So if there is the struggle continues. It makes you stronger. And the main thing is, doesn't matter what place you are when you graduate from law school, the main thing is that you graduate and you can go on and do some very meaningful and effective things. So I just want to encourage you, and for those of you, some may be top of the class law review, and I applaud you. But sometimes for those of us that aren't, it's just good to know that this is a means to an end. I got no financial aid. As a matter of fact, at that time I was dating Greg, who is now my husband, and this is my first. He said, hey, you need to go into the dean's office and talk to them. So I went to the dean's office and told him I got no financial aid, and I was a 7 out of 8. My mother didn't work. My father worked. He was a blue collar, worked in the factory. And the dean said, well, what you want me to do? He pull money out the drawer. So not successful, but I got through it. I thought Case was a good law school, and that's why I chose to come here.
Yeah, we want you to talk a little bit more, both of you, talk about some other of those experiences you had, good, bad, and ugly. And I want to go back to ask Gerald about the formation of Balsa. But you made me think about my own experience because when I was going through law school, Gerald Jackson, James Hardiman, James Alexander, and Dean Buchanan were mentors of ours still. Judge Groves and I are almost contemporaries, but they were one of the preeminent law firms here in Cleveland, and hired so many students for summer and permanently, and just generally, as mentors, and then as a relationship that were developed through networking and Norman Minor Bar Association was just extraordinary, and so I know that I benefited great from their mentorship and their work, and seeing them as people to aspire to. and lawyers to aspire to, but also what they did with Boston, the formation of Boston, what that did for me and my colleagues and peers while we were here. So I want Gerald to, if you would, tell us a little bit about how was it that Gallup became the second chapter in the entire nation of Boston.
Well, the atmosphere was such that it was during the Vietnam War. Many people that started law school with me did not finish, many guys in particular, because they ended up in Vietnam, being recruited through the draft. So many of the students who were in my class, and somewhat me included, we weren't fresh out of undergraduate school. And many of the students were veterans of the war. One of the fellows who was the founders of BASA, who was a former judge in the state of Rhode Island, passed away a few years ago. We were more advanced adults, if you will. Because of that, some of the professors had a difficult time addressing us and dealing with us because they wanted to teach adult men and women here to get an education to engage in. And we had some of those challenges that Judge Groves mentioned about the aid, for example. We had an admissions and financial aid committee at the law school. One student sat on that committee. The other members of that committee were the dean, tax professor, Katz.
Yeah, he's emeritus. Emeritus, not a classroom, yeah. But he's around.
And the dean of the law school was Lou Tucker, who subsequently became the president of the university. We would fight like heck to get people admitted to the law school so that when we had gatherings of students come in, later expressed an interest in the law school, we wanted to see them admitted. Lobby professors, we'd lobby the deans and counselors to see if we could get them in order to pacify us, I guess. They arranged to have me appointed as the student representative, the student body representative for that committee. And I felt very good about that because it gave me an inside track to try to have some influence. But what I didn't recognize was money game, which is the money game that they caught the judge up in. We would fight to get people admitted, and they would become admitted, many of them, because we didn't fight for folks who we didn't think were really qualified or up to the task. That would have been unfair to them and unfair to the law school as well. But then we would come back in the fall and look and see these people hadn't showed up. We said, wait a minute, as much as this person expressed an interest, I spent all that time with them, socializing with them, they didn't show up. But what we learned was they didn't get any financial aid. Let's see, that was Earl Lycan was the assistant. Earl was the money man. So once we addressed the money issue, we started to make a few more advances. So out of all of that kind of environment, we thought that having an organization of some sort formulate to bring people together so they could collaborate and express their concerns, voice their opinions, and have some leveraged ability to go in and speak with the dean about different matters. That's how the concept of the Boston concept evolved. Walter Stone was probably most responsible for doing the playing field was nationally for Boston. And as a matter of fact, I think it was Michigan State or University of Michigan was and that law school had committed a lot of money to supporting the Boston creation of the Boston organization on campus. Case did not make a similar commitment. However, the an annual meeting was being scheduled in which they were trying to other students to join the Boston movement. And so Walter Stone and I had a meeting with the dean to solicit funds to support our going there with and our representation to the dean was that if we went to the national gathering, we would bring the presidency of the Boston office to Case Western Reserve. Rather arrogant, I get that. But
Sounds familiar.
that was our pitch, and that's what we believe. I'll try to keep this to a short story, factual story. So, long story short, we get the nod to go to the national. Some of the schools just had huge numbers. Rutgers, for example, had 2 different campuses there, and they just had people. Michigan had a lot of folks. Howard had a number of people there. So, what gave us some leverage at this annual meeting was that a couple of us had taken corporate law. We decided, looking at the numbers, we wouldn't have any leverage at the convention. So what we thought we should do, we should solicit proxies. And we went around to all the small schools and solicited their proxy or voting proxies. Our representation was that if you provide us with your voting proxy, we'll guarantee you somebody on the board that you like, somebody that you support. We'll make sure. So we went ahead and pursued that. Okay. So we went ahead and pursued that, and at the end of the day, we literally controlled the convention. We had more votes than Rutgers or anybody at the convention. So the voting went down for the national seat, and when the voting was done, there was one vote to be cast in the whole convention, and it was our vote. So we had a caucus before we voted to determine whether we wanted the seat to be at Case Western Reserve or whether we wanted it to be at the University of Michigan. And the decision was between Gerald and myself and Walter Stone that Michigan was a better seat for the national head because they had committed the funds and resources to the organization, and that if we really felt that strong about it, we could always pick it up next year and become the seat for Boston. So that's how that came about. The next thing that occurred here at Case on the national scene for Boston was the design of a national logo for the Black American Law Students Association. So sitting in a much less attractive moot court room on a Dover, because I personally was in the very last class. They graduated from the old law school.
I don't think they know that law school used to be over there.
They don't know that.
Yeah.
Well, the building is still there. It's a building, the oldest building you'll see on the Dover if you're walking south from Euclid Avenue. On the east side of the street is the old law school. I'm not sure what's in there now.
I don't know either.
Yeah. But it was strategically located very proximate to the the coroner's office and University Hospital, and we used to traverse through the coroner's office into the hospital dining area to have our lunch. Occasionally, but of course, we didn't see it. We didn't make those many level changes, but that was kind of the atmosphere of things at the time, and it was very beneficial. The formation of the law school really sent a message to the deans and the other folks at the law school that we were serious students. We were going to be treated as men and women. And I was also interested in the story you talked about with the property law professor. Was that Haskell that was here? Or
Patricia Murphy.
Murphy, I didn't know. Yeah. But those stories were too common with the grading situations and things like that. And all those things encouraged us to make the effort to make it a better environment for all of the students and therefore improve the law school overall. So that's a bit of how BASA got started, and we were blessed to have the support of many of the African American lawyers and judges in the community who would come in and speak with us and spend time with us. Actually, one of our favorites was a municipal court judge by the name of Charles Fleming. His son sits on the federal bench as of about a year ago. It's been about a year, yeah. And his dad used to come in and speak with us, encourage us, give us some tips on how we might address law school and things to keep in mind when we left law school and started our careers.
Would you add about your experience, talk a little more about your experiences at law school and with BALSA and challenges that you faced as well as opportunities that you had?
Well, there's no doubt the impact that BALSA had. And I mean, when you are feeling beleaguered, and it's just good to go to a place of refuge. And that's how we saw the BALSA office. It was where you could go and you could share and talk about the challenges that you were going through. And it's just a great camaraderie, and I'm still close friends with many of the people that came to Case, or they were at Case when I was there, even though some have moved away. Its presence was significant, I think, in terms of being able to let your hair down, breathe. And I'm extremely grateful for BALSA existing and existing now. Some will say, why is there a need? I think that we still have many challenges, and the need is still very real. And it's important to be able to have people who have similar experiences that can help encourage you and sometimes even share what you're going through. It's not just you. Often people will suffer in isolation thinking that they're the only ones, but it's good to know that there are others who are there to encourage and support you. I would say overall, by the time I left Case, it was really just a means to an end. I met my husband here. And I got re-engaged because of a dean that called me probably 20 years ago. And she was going through the list of names. And she says, I'm just trying to reconnect students and, alums. We really do need you. And because when they would call my home to ask for a donation, I'm like, y'all didn't give me any money. My husband's name is next. Don't call him because I'm answering for him. No. I found my job on it was not the law school that helped me. They help the people who can help themselves, who have the high GPA. It's those of us who don't. But in terms of probably, preparing me for the law, I appreciate the education that I received. Probably in terms of having a better experience, I think that there could have been. I think that there's no doubt that there could have been a better experience. And I do believe that there are efforts now to assist and help students understand what is expected. And I think probably even, my major, I was a business major. I was working with numbers. I think I may have had to use a blue book once or twice. And so I think that was part of the challenge in terms of just really being prepared, for the writing and for the rigor. Although I graduate college in 3 years, so I believe, with that struggle, it builds some humility. Sometimes you gotta understand you're not all of that. So, I appreciate the experience, and I believe I'm a better person for it. I'm stronger for it. Because you do develop some fortitude from that. And when you mentioned Professor Katz is the person that I talked with when I thought about coming, even applying. And he was one of the teachers that I got a very favorable grade from. And so he said, they don't care about that. You have something to offer. And so I'm glad that Donna, I can't think of Donna's last name now, from Texas, who was the dean, that encouraged me to re-engage. And for Professor Katz, who encouraged me to say, give it a try. And I enjoyed the 2 years. I think it was 2 years that I taught, because then I ran for the Court of Appeals. And, in terms of campaigning, it gave me a nice affirmation to say I graduated from Case and I was able to go back and teach there. And I think the Case still has a strong reputation. I think it was much stronger when I went. It was like number 33, and that was one of the reasons too that I went to Case. It was ranked highly. So they didn't give me any money, but I felt too you have to invest in yourself. And so myself and
Yeah, and if I could, just sort of thinking back makes me reflect on my experience here briefly. I came in '87 after doing 2 years and getting my master's at Purdue University, and grew up near here, but not in Cleveland. And when I moved here, I got admitted. I had a little financial aid, didn't have a lot. My parents were poor, and so they couldn't buy support, so I had to work during the summer and then even during my first year. But my first experience being in a place of being at law school, and there in my class, like I think I told some of you the other day, there were about 235 students. No, there might have been 20 or so, 25 black law students. Like I said, it was much bigger entering classes than when I went to law school. But my first day of orientation was a wake-up call for me in terms of just dealing with not even the rigor, but the social and racial dynamics that were going on in this city. I lived in Cleveland Heights on Coventry, right off of Coventry, on Hampshire Road, Coventry. And first day of orientation, I walked to the law school to go to sort of orientation reception late afternoon. Happened to be raining or drizzling at that time. Walking through Little Italy, and I didn't know anything from Little Italy that time, right? Nobody told us about this. And I'm walking downhill by myself, going through Little Italy, and these three white guys, sort of confront me on the sidewalk. They, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to the school there. And I point with my umbrella, and they said, you don't belong in this neighborhood. I said, I'm not going to stay in this neighborhood. I'm going through this neighborhood. And I thought they might want to try to do something to me, but they didn't. They just let me pass, or I passed. And that was my introduction to Case Law School. But from there, the respite, the support I got from my fellow black students, law students, other students as well, but especially their sort of, being able to get support, to talk to one another, to provide that support was just invaluable. And having to even in the classroom sometimes it was a little rough. But I had mentors like Professor Katz, Professor Inton, actually Professor Mercer was my legal writing instructor, and she was amazing. Yeah, she was like 10 years old when she was a law teacher. Pretty natural. But yeah, it was just and that, and with regards to BALSA, the other thing, Judge Rose and Attorney Jackson alluded to this idea in terms of the opportunities it created for networking and the conferences. The year I got there, my first year, Sylvester Slummers and others had founded the Midwest Regional Conference and the job fair that would happen there. It was Stephanie, I gotta get the sister's name, because she and Sly were actually the ones who created this opportunity out of the fact that there was just that our career development office wasn't providing resources or network opportunities or job opportunities that we thought we deserved. And so there was a cry for that across the region. So let's have this job fair. And we decided we were the first host of the job fair. It was at a hotel, what is now Hotel Intercontinental there at Cleveland Clinic. And Professor Gerhard, or Dean Gerhard, was the dean, and and Sly was the president of BALSA. And he went to Dean Gerhard and said, look, we're going to hold this event, but we don't have any money to hold the event. And Dean Gerhard said, all right, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. It was something like $10,000. And he said, I'm giving it, it's not from the dean, not from the law school, this is my own personal money, but you're going to pay me back. and so Sly promises, we're going to make this money back, because of registration, et cetera, et cetera. It was a smashing success. The dean got his money back, but Sly wasn't really sure if the dean was kidding or not, right? Whether if he didn't get his money, what was going to happen, right? But Dean Gerhard, bless his soul, God rest his soul. He was the one that said, okay, I'm going to support y'all, I'm going to subsidize this because I think it's that important that we do this thing. And so BALSA, not only what they did here, I know that was one of the reasons. I remember Attorney Jackson and Attorney Ross Allen talking about that one of the other reasons why they wanted to found BALSA, because y'all weren't getting those opportunities either, right? Yeah, and so a lot of support there. And so those are just some examples of my support system. You talked about Professor Katz and others. But when you graduated, what was it like when you first graduated? What was your first career? That part of your career, when you just graduated. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll have one more question before we take it to the audience.
Well, for me, during law school, I was in combat mode. And that's what we did throughout law school. We were always at, fighting for some change.
Yeah.
In the law school, outside the community, we did a lot of advocacy and tried to support community organizations. So when I was getting ready to graduate, I had probably about 4 opportunities that I managed to come across. And one that fit the closest to my real interest in law, which was in taxation. I never would have guessed in a million years that I'd fall in love with tax. It just sounds boring. But I had a tax professor who was a genius when it came to taking that whole playing field of taxation and boiling it down to a kindergarten level. And that's the way he started his class. That was Leon Gavin.
Oh, yeah.
Leon Gavin was a retired professional hockey player. Became the partner of a Seattle, I believe, Seattle, Washington law firm. And for some reason then decided he wanted to be a law professor, and he ended up the case Western Reserve. And he was a great tax professor. I never thought I would enjoy tax, but I fell in love with it. But one offer I had was with a DC firm that was basically involved in taxes and that kind of thing. A typical DC law firm environment, very stiff, very stuffy. When I was leaving the interview, the guy asked me, he said, one of the things you expressed an interest in was starting a law firm one day. And if you wanted to do that, why would you want to be here? Well, I kind of smoothed it over on my response to, suggest that many of the things I wanted to do with my own law firm, I could probably do there, and I could do it on a different level and have greater influence on policy. And since they were in D.C., all the things he wanted to hear, right? So that I went down that road. But ultimately, I decided that of the opportunities I had, there was an organization called the Reginald Heber Smith Community Legal Fellowship. In many ways, they were glorified legal aid lawyers. There were about 140 plus of us around the country. Headquarters is in Washington at Howard University Law School. I ultimately decided to join that group. And I was assigned to work in Columbus, Ohio, called legislative advocacy, because we couldn't call ourselves lobbyists, and law reform litigation, which was really referred to class action litigation. That whole landscape of class action litigation is to the point that it's an exceedingly expensive area to get involved in any meaningful way. There was a lot less expensive to do. I was assigned to an office at Ohio State. That's where I started. And I loved that job. It was a lot of fun. I got a chance to spend most of my time during the General Assembly in Ohio, advocating on issues regarding things that would impact low and moderate income folks. Also had a great interest in housing. So the combination was that I ended up lobbying. I would end up working on bills that involved housing development in Ohio. I also worked on that kind of legislation in the U.S. Well, there were a couple guys in D.C. that took me out of the lane. So-called Mitchell brothers were very famous in those. One was a congressman out of Baltimore, and his brother was a lobbyist on the Hill. And so they taught me a lot about how to engage folks, how to engage their staff, and critical it was to develop relationships with the staff of folks who were legislators. So that one of the things we would do in D.C. is we would have seminars on the campus at Howard University, understanding that legislative aides don't, in the type of business that they're in, they get a check. They don't get a lot of what I call pickup money, right? So, but if you're having a seminar or something, you learn how to have a seminar and attract people the way the folks in the district do it, which means you have to have big names on that ticket. I can remember one, for example, there was a young lady, her last name was Jackson, that's what I remember. So she worked for Senator Walter Mondale. She would always say yes when I asked her if she would participate on one of the panels. well, for lunch and a couple of bucks, I mean, she would have come anyway. But, now you get to put her name on the invitation, you know, Office of Senator Walter Mondale, blah, 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 fast and a whole 9 yards. And you have 2 or 3 of folks like that. Guy who was a lobbyist for legal aid services. He was a typical 60s kind of a free-flowing guy, long hair, the whole nine. He would come and do a lot of them as well. I forget. But the long and short of it is that it was a great way to influence policy, if you will, by having these sessions and teaching folks lobbying and things like that. And back in Ohio, I would do similar things as well. And I did that for about almost 2 years, and then a lawyer out of Cleveland in Columbus, and he had secured a contract with Bar Association of Greater Cleveland, training lawyers on how to engage real estate developments in the inner city. I learned a bit about that through federal legislation that I worked with and folks at HUD in DC and folks in Columbus, office that was engaged in that. And a lot of legislation at that time in Ohio was around finance, because under the Ohio Constitution, the way we were structured at the time, they could not issue bonds because it was an unlawful lending of the state's credit. And so we had 2 pieces of legislation floating around the state. One came out of Ohio, out of Cleveland, Ohio. The other came out of Cincinnati. And both being shepherded by large law firms in both areas. Fireside and Dempsey. And then there's a parallel firm in Cincinnati. The thing about it was, I think Dick Celeste was the governor at the time. The interesting thing was that, from a lawyer's perspective, all the lawyers knew that both bills were blatantly unconstitutional. And we were fighting to get one of them passed anyway. And Dick Celeste, who was not the governor yet, he was majority whip in the House. Argue that the bill from the Cleveland area was the strongest bill. Doing all that kind of stuff, trying to policy. And today that debate has been resolved because the Ohio Constitution has been amended so that we can issue those bonds now. That state agency has been around for a long time. It was just inert because it really couldn't function right now. Some of the things that I've been getting involved in. So I think ever since law school, I was involved in something, stirring the pot and trying to make a difference. Locally in Cleveland, we had about almost 6 organizations that were focused on supporting African American lawyers and judges in their positions. And 2 organizations, at least 2 of the organizations were primarily women lawyers organizations. We had 4 or 5 local bar association organizations, all before the Norman Minor Bar existed. And then eventually all those organizations came together to form the Norman Minor Bar Association, operate under one roof in order to advance. Kind of then and now, snapshot, if you will. A lot of lawsuits came about and, you know, you gotta have some leverage. We did in law school, when we were in law school, we created leverage through litigation that would either happen or promised. At that time, we created some leverage with lawsuits as well. Not just filing them, but being successful with them. Butler. I've known Annette since high school. Band together. But Annette was an extraordinary young lawyer who worked as an assistant U.S. attorney for about 27 years. One of their esteemed litigators over there. But before she racked up all those years of success in the U.S. Attorney's office, she agreed to serve as a plaintiff in a lawsuit that we filed against judges. They did not hire black female bailiffs at the time, personally, and so we filed a lawsuit in federal court, got a consent decree, got a lot of, we were young lawyers at that point, got a lot of bad rap from local politicians about problems. And the irony of it was that folks who were issuing all the criticism were the same people who were going to get the benefit from us having done it, because they were going to make the appointments. And we didn't have any ability to make any appointments, so that's exactly what happened. Other lawsuits as well. But on the heels of all that, I come back to Cleveland because I've been recruited to come back to Cleveland to do the thing with the Bar Association and all that. I agreed to do that. And we had a team of 3 lawyers, myself, a guy named Tom Gray, the brother of Fred Gray, okay, and Avery Friedman, who is from Cleveland as well. Things that we did principally was to focus on housing discrimination, which is what Avery Friedman did a lot of. Focused on housing development, which is more of what I did. Tom was more of an administrator that kind of kept the balance of the activities, keeping the doors open because he brought the money in from the bar associations. The only discrimination lawsuit that I got involved in was probably the one against the city of Parma. I think at the time Avery was not a member of the federal court, and I was. I litigated a bit while I was in therefore I had to join the federal court in the Southern District. So when I came back to the Northern District, filed that lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice came in and decided that a pattern and practice of discrimination in housing in Parma, so they took it over and completed it. Parma to enter into an affirmative action. I've always been more on the cutting edge of, or the edgier part of the practice of law. Where you make some friends, but you probably make more enemies. But it gets things done. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got a lot done, Judge. Roles early on as well.
I started off as an assistant prosecutor. And many ask, well, how can you be a prosecutor in black? But it's important to be in those spaces so that you can bring your lens and also have some impact. I was only there for 2 years because at the municipal level, you're dealing with the low trials back to back and was ready to try the next and started to think I didn't need to prepare. And I knew that was that I didn't know enough to be that comfortable. So I went to the Housing Authority. The fact that I was a lawyer allowed me to advance pretty quickly through the administration. deputy directors, and by the time I left, I was in charge of the first 1,000 employees, the purchasing products, the warehousing of those products. Assistant and then became. But the experience was very worthwhile. In the state of Ohio, because there was the move to allow residents to have a bigger say. Practice law with my husband, grows and grows.
What made you run for judge? I want to hear a little
No,
bit.
it's interesting
Good.
because I thought as a young lawyer, being a judge was very boring. I'm like, sit there. I really did. I was very boring. But I think, the more you practice, the better appreciation you have for what they do. And it's a very political process. So I was not from Cleveland. My husband lives the majority of his life. It's very political. It's a political process. You think you can be a judge. People have to believe that, and that's getting the voters to vote for you. So when I ran in 2001, I was definitely the underdog. There were several other people in the race. At that time, I was able to my husband invested quite a bit in the campaign. Running for judge costs money because you have to make your name a household name. Unlike some names are household names, they're worth 20, 50,000 votes just by the name. An O'Malley or Russo or Gallagher. I mean, those are names that people vote in. There are 3 Gallaghers on the Court of Appeals. There are several Gallaghers in Common Pleas Court. And so once the name becomes known, it's a lot easier to be successful. And it's good to be able to show that you fought your way into the door.
Well, I wanted to open up to questions because I want you also to integrate your thoughts and responses and reflections into advice giving. You're trailblazing on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and you haven't shared that. Some of us know the story, but we'd like to hear that. But I want to first ask if anyone has any questions or thoughts that they want to express. Attorney Jackson or Judge Groves.
Hi, my name is Corinne. My question is, what is your biggest piece of advice to a first-year law student and someone who wants to be a judge?
Well, as a first-year law student, you're only a first year one year, and you get through it. I think you keep your eyes on the prize. It's a means to an end. I believe like that first year, I put in so much time that I don't think the time that I was putting in was productive. You could be busy work, but not working smart. And I think that that's why it was so important that I had other things to do, like a part-time job, so that then maybe I could better manage the time and get through the work. And I'm sure the workload is just as heavy or even heavier now than when I was in law school. But I think it's, you get through the first year and the second year gets better, and then the third year is even better because you're beginning to look to, what you've been preparing for and where you will be. I think in becoming a judge, I think is important because I see people say that when I've seen people who say they're going to run, and it's like, I haven't seen you out here. Nobody knows who you are. You go in a room, if you don't know everybody in the room, you better be with somebody who knows everybody in the room. And I had that conversation. I really felt bad afterwards because I just knew the person was not ready. She was not ready. She was not going to win. And I wasn't being negative, but there are some realities, and I was just trying to express some of those realities. And I think she probably thought I was trying to rain on a parade, but I'm sure she has reflected on the conversation and appreciate the fact that, you know, there's some groundwork that you have to lay in order to run for judge. And I think that that is a critical piece in terms of becoming a judge. In terms of the appointment in, I know that I was not the type of lawyer or person that I would have gotten an appointment. My mother was arrested by the Canton police. I was one of her attorneys. The case went up to the United States Supreme Court. She used to train police officers. And so and also just in terms of dealing with issues that you have to have a certain level of not being above the radar to, I mean, if you see, you know, you pay a high price, although you can get through it. We see how the confirmation hearings went with Justice Katanji Jackson Brown, and how they challenged her because she represented people who couldn't afford representation, which they have a right. And it should not be something that you have to defend, but she had to do that. But she was fortunate and she made it through the confirmation. But you do have to prepare for it. It doesn't just happen. Or if you're not prepared, because I wasn't, but my husband was. And so it was because of his political connections and all the years that he helped people politically that I was able to find favor in elections.
Doesn't your Black Judges Association do mentorship, and is there training for people who are interested in becoming judges? Say, training in campaigning, fundraising, things like that. Is there some organization that does that?
There is an organization, the Buckeye. I can't think of the rest of the name of, but they do training for people who they believe are like-minded in reform, and also being able to push further the efforts to a fair. The High Black Judges that was founded in 2020. Our effort at this point really was to have a voice. There are only 56 Black judges in the state, 700 judges, and there are only 6 Black appellate judges out of 60 plus appellate judges. And those Black judges, we have 3 in Cobb County, we have 2 in Columbus, and we have 1 in Chief Justice, we have our Justice Melody Stewart, who fighting very hard to retain that seat. They changed the manner in which appellate and Supreme Court justices are elected with the party affiliation on the ballot, and there's no question that that was a reaction to the fact that she won and told that you slipped through, but next time people will know that you're Black and they'll know you're a Democrat. Ballot this year.
Hi, thank you both for coming and speaking with us. My question is kind of a stream of consciousness, but it'll get somewhere, I promise. So, how is it that during your time you both spoke about the inequities that Black students experience, but also law school demands that you obviously focus on your academics? How is it that you can balance speaking about the inequities that you see while also trying to be a high-performing student, whatever that means, and also having the unity to do that as an organization? Like, you know, we mentioned some folks have this contention or pushback against BALSA because it's like, oh, these issues that were of the past or of yesterday, but we're still experiencing lack of funding for the e-board being able to do things, or inequity amongst other minoritized groups that still feed back into what's going on in the US. And just a whole host of things, even now with our search for a dean. And how is it that BALSA, or as you all, when you were during your tenure at school, how did you balance that as students and also advocates?
I would say that it's very, very difficult, and it goes beyond BALSA. My husband and I were co-founders of an organization in Shaker to deal with the disparity in achievement. I think that there is no question that the hope was that, you know, once our children leave the district, then you have to have some other parents. And so there isn't the level of continuity to ensure that there's change. And that's why it's important that you have advisors that can assist, because you're a student first. You know, you can lose and get so involved in the struggle that you will not be able to further it and be a part of it in the. So it does take, it can take its toll. I was very close to one of the students at Cleveland State's law school, so consumed with the name change that it was really almost unhealthy, you know, for her. And, you know, I even had that conversation, and it became very personal because they weren't moving at the pace that she thought. And it's like, you know, change takes time. It's not personal. It's not about you. And just understanding that you do your part, you lay the foundation, and then there will be others that will come along, realizing that you're not the only person. You have to work as a group effort. But you have to stay on top of your studies, because if you don't, you won't be here. And I know at least, and I don't know if Gerald is the same for you, but I know at least in the time that I was at Case, and then also probably in talking to people, like there were 9 in my class that started, 8 graduated. In terms of, you know, the blacks that finish, at least in that time period, there wasn't 100%. Somebody fell by the wayside, and I hope that that's not the case now. But I know it was pretty prevalent when I was there. I graduated in 1981. My husband graduated in 79. But that was what our experience was during that time period.
Well, 20 years earlier, in 1961, quite that early, did I? No. 71. Okay. You graduated 81.
81.
Okay. Well, your class did well because classes prior to yours didn't have the success rate that yours did. My class, we started with 3, Judge Phipps, Herb Phipps, and Ellen Washington. And 3 of us finished. So we finished, you started and finished 100%. Following class, which actually I can't think of any other class since ours. Yeah, so that's rare. Yeah. But you know, she does ask a very good question. And I endorse 100% what the judge was saying. You know, you have to prioritize because you hear, you know, bar, right? So that becomes your number one goal. The other things can be a distraction to some extent. I think regarded as an obligation and responsibility that we had to do more than just sit around and take it, if you will. And to be honest with you, a lot of fun dishing it out too. When I was in law school, the school had a student court. So if you had disputes, you could always file a lawsuit in a student court. Fresh it out, you know, you could professors to be on your law team and things like that. One of the guys who was a founding member of the Bossa group, Nathaniel Backus, always loved litigation. When we were in law school, I don't even know how he learned the word litigation, but he came into law school loving litigation. And he loved litigation. And he became a litigator. And he returned home. He was from Virginia. And practiced primarily in Virginia. And I think his daughter became a litigator. So Nathaniel Backus was one of the lawyers, one of the students at the time that you would go to if you had a dispute to represent you in the student court to file a complaint. Get busy. Walter Stone, who's a fellow I described earlier, who was a Vietnam vet, remember a heated discussion we had in the dean's office about some issue that occurred. And one of the things the dean did was he gave us an additional education over and above our law school education, because he taught us the art of dealing with groups and the art of manipulating behavior. So if someone went to Dean Tepper and told him that there was a problem, stand up like he was outraged and start banging on tables and said, "We're going to have a meeting tomorrow. Can you be available tomorrow? We're going to deal with this." Yeah. Get there the next day, he'd have a fabulous lunch laid out with wine and everything, and folks would just get in there and eat a bunch of food and have 5 or 6 cocktails before the next law class. Go through this whole cathartic experience and call some names, and, some profanity and the whole 9 yards. But what we didn't recognize was initially that once you had that cathartic experience, all the steam was gone. And you try to make it to the next class and stay awake because you had a wonderful lunch. But it was an educational process for us. We came to understand that he was pulling the strings. So that was good education. But don't take your eye off the prize, as the judge was saying. You got to focus on the education part. But understand that you do have some obligation to improve upon your environment if you can do that, and solicit the support of people inside and around the law school that can join your team. I mean, you're going to find some professors who are as anxious to join you as you are anxious to have them participate, and others, have a different view. It's a good educational process, I think. Have the balance, and you have a focus, and you have a goal, you can. I remember a threat that Walter Stone issued to the dean, because he was literally trying to raise the money for this school. Ran into a real snag when the shooting in Kent State happened, because the wallets dried up in 24 hours. Students are crazy. I'm not donating money to universities. They're killing kids and so forth. So that became a necessity for the law school to regroup about how we're going to continue to raise money in this environment. It's another learning experience. But Walter told the dean when we were having some issues, he said, "Well, don't seem to be moving along fast enough with the student court business." So I found another lawyer that has a license to practice law, unlike Nate Backus, who was a student. And we'll be in court next week. And so he said, "Well, that the student court's not, going to be in session next week." Walter said, "Well, it'll be in session. It's down on Superior. It's called the United States Federal Courthouse." To get his attention. It never got filed, but just throwing it out there. So we did those kind of things, and we go back and laugh and have a good time, because we understood that we had moved the pendulum a bit, and that we were going to get some concessions, and we normally did. It becomes a head game. So understand that it can be a fun head game. It can be an educational head game, but it's a serious game all at the same time. You make some strides. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You never give up, and never, ever, ever lose your sense of self-worth and your sense of self. That's the most important thing. You got to hang on to you. Ever let anyone compromise your view of you. That happens a lot, especially at majority schools. A few of them, starting with Kent State University. I know you went to too, right?
Institutional casualties.
Exactly. Once you let folks get in between your ears, you can't make it. So, know who you are. All accounts.
Echoing, thank you for coming to speak this evening. Really appreciate the time. One of the things that I noted through both of your remarks is that the networks that you've built have really carried you through to where you are, but how have you gone about nurturing and being able to be so connected at both the local, state, and national level? It feels like there are an infinite amount of issues that are constantly in need to be addressed. And as I noted earlier in your remarks, there's you go 2 steps forward and then someone says, oh, now we're going to make the rules harder. This is where the new finish line is, et cetera. So how do you rely on your networks to continue to push forward? We're in an election year. Every year is an important election year, especially on the local levels too. But how do you draw? I noted the community piece coming through in your remarks, but if there are other things, advice or notes on that, that'd be excellent to hear about.
I would say the community piece is critical because you can do more when there's more than just you, and you have like-minded people, and there are organizations that are out there, and you can form your own. I formed caring communities to deal with the shaker issue. I know that we made a difference in terms of opening the door and trying to level the playing field so that Black students were in the advanced placement classes, the high Black judges, when issues were raised. You have the Ohio Judicial Conference, and they weren't championing the issues that we thought we needed to champion. And so we formed our own organization, and with that, we know that we have begun to make a mark. Next week, there will be judges in the urban areas. There's about 8 of them. They will be in high schools talking to students, and so our hope is to be able to have an impact statewide. And as you do more, like through the when BOSS is through, there's the National Bar Association. So I'm a part of the Judicial Council. I know that Attorney Jackson has been to the National Bar. So there's a National Consortium on Racial and Ethnic Fairness. And as you go to organizations, you'll learn about others, and you can find your place and be a part of that effort. Because the challenge of not knowing the history is that then you really can't pinpoint it. And I think that we know when things are amiss. Sometimes it's hard. It gets harder and harder to really articulate it because they've taken away the obvious. Just because it's obvious doesn't mean that it's there. And so, the challenge is still there. And I think you are with like-minded people that can help the discussion and then go beyond the discussion.
Sort of on your point, I'd simply say this. You have a good sense of what your goal is and your objective is. Time passes, people that are involved in different organizations, they come and go. Some will be there for years and others not so long. But at the end of the day, it's a small world. And you can go almost anywhere. If you have a certain interest in something, it won't be too long. If you change towns or states or what have you, there are other folks in those towns and states that are going to have similar interests to yours. It won't take you that long to connect with them. The more you move around, the more you network, the more you collaborate, the more you find that the world's a very small place. Talk to somebody for a little bit, and then you discover that that person knows somebody that you know. So names will change, faces will change, but the concepts will be the same. Don't you change.
Right. I can't thank you enough, Attorney Jackson, Judge Groves, for your words and for your thoughts and reflections, and for your education. Please join me in thanking them. They are part of our community. They are part of this community, and I know that they will welcome you and greet you with open arms and open ears if you want to talk with them about these things or any other things that relate to your law school experience and what's beyond these doors for you. So please avail yourselves of these wonderful resources. All right. And thank you again for your time. Take what's left there if y'all want the rest of the pizza. I need 2 slices. So. But otherwise, hey, thank you again. And always thank you for your work. And we'll see you soon.